Quick, quick mic check. Hello, all viewers. Welcome to the 46th Khelo Chess India team battle. Just 28 seconds remaining now to start this tournament. It's going to be another good entertainment for next 1 hour. So just relax, sit back, and listen to the commentary. Try to learn something new. Try to learn new openings, understand the tactics that's happening on the board, and also you can ask your questions. That's the new thing that we have started recently. You can ask your questions, and I will be happy to answer all your questions. This is your host Amir Saman doing the live broadcast to you for 46 Kilo Chess India team battle. Oh, it's my turn. Actually, I got a game. Okay, let's just try to play this game once. I did not realize that I did not click on join. So I did not click on withdraw actually, and it was still in the joined mode. So hence I had to. I think e5 is now expected. E5 will be played now. I can play f5. I can play e5 first. Yeah, let me play e5 first. Just making sure that this knight cannot go back. Queen b6 is now expected, right? So let me just capture with the d pawn. Knight d4, and I think I can play king h2 now. Now threat is to play this g4 move. Pawn takes, and I think g4 can be played now to trap this knight. So probably a move like bishop h6 is expected. Yeah, bishop h6 has been played now. So that should be replied with knight to. Okay, so I have this f5 move. If I play f5, I have bishop takes c1 can be played because this bishop is hanging on h6, and then I can capture the pawn on this g7 square. If bishop goes back, then I can again capture this h7 pawn. So f5 is one of the good moves I think is playable right now. So f5, bishop takes c1, pawn takes g6, bishop goes back to h6, then pawn takes h7, check, king takes h7. What after that? Okay, let's yeah, we can go for that variation. Let's try to play f5 now, guys. Let's try to be some do some adventures right away instead of just playing the passive game. Let's go for some adventures. So bishop takes c1 is now possible. I can capture back with the rook, but I'll try to play this pawn takes pawn and ask black question if he wants to save his bishop. If he wants to save the bishop, his bishop will go back to h6, then I can capture this pawn on h7, king takes h7 or king h8 can be played. And then probably I should look for this queen e1 and queen h4 move just to make sure that this h file is attacked in a very good way. Also, this knight to e4 move is available after that. Okay, so knight to e4 can be played. I think that's what black is thinking right now, that if he captures the c1 bishop, this g6 can be captured right away. I think bishop takes c1 is kind of forced now. Or if there is also bishop f4 check, that is also possible. Bishop f4, but I think that will lead to again the same variation with g3. Bishop takes c1 and let me capture the pawn on g6. If bishop, if black gets tempted to save the bishop, then the king would be in a, oh, bishop to f4 check. I was not expecting this one. So king has to go. King cannot go back to g1 because of queen b6 check, and then knight g3 is dangerous. So g3, I think I have to sacrifice the g3 pawn now. Bishop takes g3, king to g2, and I do have this knight f4 is now coming very soon and very fast, but the g3 is hanging then. Okay, so knight f4 is not playable right away. I do have this resource knight to e4. This now bishop is hanging. Bishop f4, and I think now knight can go to the g5 square. Yep. Bishop takes g5, knight takes g5, rook takes f1, queen takes f1 is not compulsory. And now queen b3 check can be played, I think so. So it's a close game, guys. If there are any viewers out there, just let me know if the voice is clear and you are able to see the broadcast as well. So that's the game for me. Let's pause and let's check other games, guys. Let's go back and check the first game here. Jeremy Martisio and Adipa is playing. So let's see. So Jeremy is from Team Future and Adipa is from RCCA. Let's just check what's happening here. So e4, c5, knight f3, d6, pawn to d4, c takes d4, knight takes d4, knight to f6, knight to c3, pawn to a6. This is called as the Najdorf variation of Sicilian. And let's see how white progressed. Bishop to e3, pawn to e6, pawn bishop to e2, pawn to b5, pawn to a3. So a3 is just making sure that this b4 is not available right now, and this e4 is remaining supported by the knight, and this knight cannot capture the e4. So bishop to b7, pawn to f3, supporting this e4 pawn twice now. Knight to d7, castles, and then we have bishop to e7. Queen to d2, castles, rook to c1, knight, rook to c8, rook to d1. So all white is trying to do is just try to hold up the center square, central files, not trying to do some aggression over here in the on the king side. Just trying to be solid in the game, not to do experimentation. Queen c7, knight to b3, knight to b6, bishop to f2. I think this is for making some room for this queen to come on this e3 square. Rook to d8, queen e3, knight to c4, bishop takes c4, queen takes c4, and knight to a5. So this is one of the forks that black has to take care of. So black won this one, but we have to check what happened in the game, and we are way back. Okay, so knight c4, bishop c4, queen c4, and knight to a5. This is a very common fork that happens in the Sicilian defense. This knight a4 move, you have to pay attention on this b7 and this c4 squares. So queen to c7, queen b6, queen takes, bishop takes, and rook to d7. So I think this bishop should have been captured on the b7 first before playing the queen b6 move. Okay, so queen b6, queen takes b6, bishop takes b6, rook d7, knight takes b7, rook takes b7, bishop to f2. So if this queen b6 was not played before, or this knight takes b7 was played before, then this bishop f2 move would not have been compulsory. As if you just go back, so this is small things, guys, which you have to pay attention now. So what white has done is that white has played queen b6. Instead of that, he could have first played knight to b7, queen takes b7, and then he can play queen to b6. And if black wants to exchange, then black can capture the b6 and bishop can capture the b6. And you don't have to lose the tempo right away, as this bishop from b6 will be attacking the d8 rook. It will have to play rook to d7 and then white to play. White has one extra move. So these are small things that you have to pay attention to. Just make sure that you don't lose your tempos in the middle game. Once you start losing the tempos, you get into a defensive position and not so you won't get much attack very soon. So bishop to f2, pawn to h6, knight to e2, rook to c7, pawn to c3, pawn to d5. So black is trying to attack the center right now. Knight takes d5, and this knight has some good squares, but they all are defended right now. Knight f4, e3, these are all defended by this bishop is defending e3 and knight is defending f4. So right now this knight doesn't have much scope from the black's point of view. Okay, so knight to d4 and bishop to g5, rook to b1, knight to e3, rook to e1, knight to c4, and rook to d1 back, knight to e3 again coming back. So some repetition of the moves, and then rook to d3 was played by white just to change something in the game. Then bishop to f6, knight to e2, knight to e5, and rook to d6, attacking the a6 pawn now. Rook to c6, rook doubles, and knight to c4 again. Now this b2 pawn is hanging. So rook takes, and rook b1. So now you can see that white is on the defensive. White has to defend his weak pawns on b3. So this knight has become a superior piece. It has tried to gain a very good square here on the c4, and then probably this b2 and a3 and everything is weak actually. Okay, so rook to d6, bishop to d4, pawn to e5, bishop to f2, rook to d2, knight to g3, rook takes b2, and this is where I think white started losing his game. Rook to d1, bishop to e7, knight to f5, bishop takes a3, rook to d7, rook to d2, rook to c7, knight to d6, challenging this knight on the f5 square. So knight e7 check, and king to h7 and knight to c6. Now everything is defended. f7 is defended by the knight, and e6 is hanging, but it's not attacked as well right now. So black can have some space here to, or some time here to develop his attack. Something like rook a7 will be a blunder right now because of rook takes f2, king takes f2, and bishop c5. There is a double attack on the rook, and but knight is supporting the a7 square. But still, that's an opportunity for black to go into the endgame. So f6 was played here, and pawn to g4, pawn to e4, pawn takes e4, knight takes e4, and then we have bishop to e3 attacking the rook on d2 square. Rook e2 was played, trying to attack the bishop. Bishop to f4 and bishop c5 check is played now. King to h1, rook to f2, bishop to h2, and bishop to b6 attacking the rook there. Rook b6 and bishop e3. Knight to d8, and now knight to e6 can put a very good pressure on this g7 pawn if it's played right away. But first knight d2 was played here, and bishop to g1, rook to f1. I think this bishop g1 move, let's think if it's compulsory right now. It's not compulsory. I think rook is knight e6 is still possible to play. Black is just trying to set up a mating net over here. Black is just trying to check if mate is possible. And I'm just thinking from this point of view that if anything can be achieved by white whatsoever after knight e6. Okay, so knight d2, bishop to g1, rook to f1, and here black white resigned actually. So the reason is that this bishop is falling away free after this bishop is also attacking g1, rook is also attacking g1, so this bishop is going to be a free bishop. And if we just go back few moves, then knight to d2 was played. So if knight to e6 here, if knight to e6, then what would black play? Black has this rook f1 check, king to g2, and I think black will might get a perpetual there. No, it's not even a perpetual. King can go and sit on h3, but again rook f3 is possible. So it's, yes, it's kind of perpetual that black would have. So probably just white was trying to get some pieces exchange here, but he ignored the threat of rook f1 and then lost his bishop and lost the game as well. So let's go back to tournament, guys, and check the next game. Next game is between Jeremy Marcio versus Kaushal Vyas. Let's check this one. So Jeremy, I think, is playing on the Bosak mode. So e4, e5, knight f3, knight c6, bishop b5, knight to f6, castles, pawn to a6, pawn bishop to a4, pawn to b5, bishop to b3, attacking this f7 pawn now. But I think this bishop c5 and castle will just take care of that. So pawn to c3, trying to prepare for the d4 attack. Pawn to d6, pawn to d4, pawn takes, bishop to b6, and bishop to e3. So black is allowed to play this move. White is actually fearless here. He is willing to give away the e4 pawn. Okay, but if knight takes e4, then I think pawn d5 or rook e1 castles. But still, I think it's manageable for black to play. Okay, so knight e4 is it's kind of a trap here because of bishop d5. Bishop d5 will attack the knight as well as this knight, and then either of the knights might have to be given for free. You can't save both the knights in that case. So that's a trap from white side. A nice move, bishop e3. Castles. Black is not getting into that trap. Knight to d2, supporting the e4 pawn now. Pawn to h6, not allowing bishop to g5 and pinning the knight. So rook to c1. This is a general pattern that we can see in the Geico piano or wherever we play c3 and d4. Even the Royal Lopez, when this pawn gets exchanged on d4, white puts his rook on c1 and tries to put more pressure on the c file by playing queen c2 and attacking this beautiful c file. So bishop to d7, pawn to a4, pawn to b4, and pawn to d5. Bishop takes e3, f takes e3, knight to e5, knight takes e5, d takes e5, knight to c4. So there is a contest going on in the center for the dominance. So this knight takes e4 is allowed, knight takes e5 is allowed, and both players are trying to generate some play in the center. Okay, let's see what happened in the next few moves. So knight takes e4 was played, knight did not capture e5, but queen played to f3. So that's a very nice move. It's actually putting the queen in this open file with the rook, and also it allows this rook to come to e3 or d1 if required. It also attacks this knight as of now. So knight to g5, queen to f2, and knight to e5 again. So black is trying to repeat the moves. Queen to f3, knight g5, queen g3, and now this e5 pawn is hanging. So e4 was played, and then h5, knight to h7, knight to e5. Slowly this knight is coming into the game and probably putting some good pressure on these squares over here on the black's king side. Okay, so rook to c8, knight takes d7, the queen takes d7, and rook to c6. So this c6 square is actually weak. Yeah, after this exchange, we can realize that putting the rook on c6 will be a very good attack, because it will attack this a6 pawn as well as this h6 pawn, and somewhere in the game this rook can become the winner of the game for white. So rook knight to d7, queen to d7, rook to c6, pawn to a5, rook h6 was allowed here. That's the mistake. H6 should not have been given for free. Pawn to c5, rook to h7, and then pawn to c4, bishop to c2, pawn to b3, bishop takes e4, pawn to g6. That's a very close call now. Rook to gh6, queen to e7, rook to f4, king to h8, pawn to h5. So white is giving away his 100%. Actually, white is giving his 100% to get a mate on this castled king. Rook to g8, pawn takes g6, pawn takes g6, and queen to h3, attacking the h7 knight twice, but it is defended twice by king as well as this queen. So it will be interesting to see what happens next. Rook to c7 and rook to h4, triple attack on the rook. There are three defenses. Oh, white won eventually, but let's quickly go back and check a few moves back. So queen g7 was played, bishop takes g6, and then rook to a7. Rook takes g7, queen takes g7. So this is the blunder actually, allowing bishop takes g6. It was good that this rook was supporting g6. At least when bishop takes g6 will be played, rook takes g6 is possible. But playing queen to g7 is a blunder because of the exchange that is going to happen on g6. Instead of that, I think black could have offered the queen exchange here. Even now, this rook takes h7 is not stoppable. So rook g7, if it is played now, rook takes h7, rook takes h7. So rook g7 is, I think, a better move, because after bishop takes g6, rook takes g6 can be played. If rook takes h7, queen takes h7, queen takes h7, rook takes h7 will leave black with two rooks against the queen. That would have given a better chance for black. Okay, but it was blunder playing queen to g7 and allowing bishop takes g6, rook to h7, rook h7, rook takes